Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Hey, we are back with the Code 47 podcast on the Secret.Friends.Unite podcasting network. I am Charlie Carden, Trek Lord of West Michigan, your humble servant commanding officer of the USS Grand Petoskey right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And as always, I am joined by my stalwart co-host from the Windy City, the famous Trekker of the Screen Rant nobility, Jen Watson. Jen, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to have you. And a familiar voice to those who listen to the network, but a very dear gentleman and friend of mine, also an SFI guy heading up the USS Rhapsody in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Let's give a warm Code 47 welcome to Mr. Aaron. Wow, how did I just forget your last name, my friend?
It's okay. Hemiger. Aaron Hemiger.
I knew it. Aaron Hemiger. Who? That's bad because you're an officer under my command, I guess. But first names. Mm-hmm. And in some Starfleet uniforms, people wear name tags, so that helps. Yeah. But anyway, no, it's awesome to have you.
Thank you.
And it's awesome to be here in general. I've been off the mic for about 2 weeks. If you listen to Todd's very short SFU recording earlier this week, I was not able to join him. I found out on last week, Saturday, when he was going to record because he was leaving Minnesota to be with family for over a week here in Michigan, that I had COVID and I could barely speak. So I missed that. I missed a recording with Peter for our Patreon, which I'll be making up. But I'm glad I didn't miss this because, Code 47 is my baby. It's what I do. So I'm glad to be back. If I go into a coughing fit, I will hand it over to one of you guys. But yeah, let's dig into it. But we'll dig into it right after we talk about our fantastic Patreons, which I just mentioned. These are the folks who give us the opportunity to make great extra content. I mentioned a recording I'm doing with Peter, who's a regular on the show, who's not with us this week. He and I are currently talking about Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica, which is a personal favorite of mine. Jen and I have talked about Sequest DSV, which we're going to get back to and talk about a little bit more. And Aaron, I may have to hit you up with the concept of the show, which is, by the way, you choose a classic series, you choose a season from that series, you choose 3 or 4 episodes, and then you just break them down. So we can talk about that kind of offline. But anyway, want to give some love on the Friends with Benefits level to Corey and HG, John Sedorf, the awesome Phoenix Sisters cosplay, Brendan Myers. Over on the BFF level, our top tier, Sean Stella and Henry Nias from the Twin Cities. My dear friend, Missy Merchant, a frequent contributor to this program, and Andy Milliken. Thank you, everybody. Remember, you can visit patreon.com/SecretFriendsUnite to do a free 1-week trial of our service and see what you think about what we do. And if you like it, please consider sticking around. All right. Commercial portion of the show is over. We're going to skip past the news because I didn't really find anything super hardcore unless you guys were thinking about anything. Jen, did I miss anything new or up and coming when it comes to the news that you wanted to jump in with? You got wild eyes like you're like, oh!
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. We talked about Prodigy coming back on Christmas last time.
Yep. So, yep, I know there was an interview out there with Tawny talking about Starfleet Academy, but I don't think it's anything super firm. So the good news is that the wheels are starting to turn again. It's my understanding that in the industry in general, things are coming back.
Worlds has their filming window set.
Oh, very good. Yes. Okay.
Season. Yeah.
There you go. As I was about to say, filming windows are starting to get established. Writers' rooms are humming again. So very likely that we'll have some decent news for you in the near future. But we are beginning our segment 1 shuffle of a drought because we don't have new content to talk about. But what's kind of cool is that Jen had this idea some time back to talk about this very topical topic that had a lot to do with what we were just talking about a moment ago, with writers' rooms returning from strike, with the actors returning from strike. And as we move forward between now and a time when Star Trek Discovery will be upon us, which is something that we're really hoping for, we will have some other things to talk about. So we as a team are discussing that. So we'll get back to you about this. But in the meantime, we're going to call segment 1 special feature this week. And I'm going to actually turn this one over to Jen because it was her idea. And what's interesting is that it fits in directly to segment 2, which we will segue to after we're done talking about this. So Jen, please take it away.
So when the strikes had started and there was a lot of sort of floundering about debating what we were going to talk about, whether we were going to be covering the currently airing shows, if that was going to be a violation of the picket line or anything like that, I said, well, maybe we should discuss one of the older shows. And because, of course, Star Trek has a wealth of older shows to discuss, and we do that in our segment too. But if we could put a special feature on an episode that tied in directly with why the strikes are happening. And that is Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode Bar Association, which is season 4, episode 16. Season 4?
Yes.
16?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
like I said,
we'd actually be discussing this week.
That's what I said exactly. So this is actually one of 6 episodes that fits right. I didn't realize that when you proposed it. I think it's just it's kismet. It's what was supposed to be. So segment 1 and segment 2 are kind of this big globule this week, but we're paying extra special emphasis to this,
to Bar Association. So we're going to be discussing that first instead of sort of out of order with the rest of the DS9 season 4 episodes that we have on the docket for today. And I wanted to, again, pay special attention to this one. Season 4, episode 16, Bar Association, directed by LeVar Burton, with a story by Barbara J. Lee and Jennifer A. Lee, teleplay by Robert Hewitt Wolf and Ira Stephen Bear, aired February 17th, 1996. And it's, Quark being up to his old Ferengi tricks, coming up with some new Ferengi tricks, which is what NFT actually stands for, is New Ferengi Tricks. Sidebar.
Awesome.
Sidebar. But he's mistreating Rom, and Rom gets sick, he can't work, and Quark is like, I'm going to dock your pay, all this terrible stuff. And it comes to Dr. Bashir and Miles O'Brien, who suggest that Rom forms a union, which is illegal under Ferengi law, and they go on strike. He forms the association. He forms a union of the Restaurant and Bar Workers Association with the other employees of Quark's Bar. Lita helps him out with this a lot. This is a really important step for the relationship of Rom and Lita, which is great. We talked about that on Lower Decks a little bit.
Right, and she's still with Bashir at this point, which happens until I think early season 5 is when they end up breaking it off. Yeah, in the Ryza episode, which we'll get there.
And I thought that it was just it's this really topical. It discusses the importance of forming a union and why you form a union and how that really has a lot to do with the values that Star Trek espouses, which is, treating people as people and not as expendable and replaceable. It's having compassion for people and realizing that we are all connected and that we all rely on each other and everyone's important to making the society work. There's value in every person and in what they do. And when Quark doesn't see that, which I think he does, but I think that he's so entrenched in Ferengi custom that he's feeling like he has to do these things and he has to act this way in order to be seen as successful. I see, Aaron, you're nodding here. Do you have something to chime in with?
Oh, well, no, I was just saying, you're absolutely right, because at his core, he's not a bad guy. You know, he's actually very caring, and even in this episode, you kind of see him struggling with his relationship between family and his ideals, and that's definitely something I think that a lot of us, have to kind of fend with on our own and find our own answers for.
And really telling that we're recording this over to the Thanksgiving weekend when a lot of us get thrust together, potentially with relatives that we don't necessarily see eye to eye with on a lot of things. But for better or for worse, if family is what you take it, what you make it, right? So that's there's never going to be any easy button around that kind of thing without doubt. But anyway, I jumped in. Please continue.
Yeah, no, I agree that's one of the things that make Quark in particular, and the other Ferengi on DS9, Rom, Nog, even Moogie when she comes in, is that Quark's ties with his family are so strong. And that is something that is powerful in a way that humanizes, for lack of a better word, the Ferengi. We see them on DS9 and they become so much more than what they were in Next Generation as these sort of laughable villains.
Right. That chuckles me up when I think about their first appearance, season 1 of TNG, The Last Outpost, which is funny. I have my background flipped around today. I wanted to show off my jacket collection, which is I was describing to Aaron how I did a final revamp of the studio. The freezer used to sit here, and I moved it in the other room, and now I have jacket swap outs so that I can so I can do easy cosplay as we record. But anyway, behind me on the other side, I usually have to my background the little L-shaped thing that has figures and knickknacks. But I do have. I did collect all 10 of the first wave, the 1992 or maybe it was 93 series Playmates figures. One of which was the Ferengi with the whip and the big loin, like kind of Clan of the Cave Bear caveman pelt that he wore. And so and one of the 3 Ferengi in that first episode was played by the delightful Armin Shimmerman, who is Quark, who I've met on several occasions and is a really awesome dude. But to think about that Ferengi and how they were poised to be, these are going to be the new villains of this new era of Star Trek. And Rick Berman, in my Star Trek companion, quickly said, well, how do you really have a villain who gets what he wants, which is, gold coins out of a replicator? You know what I mean? There's no oomph for them as a villain. They don't want glory or honor to conquer anything. They just want money.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're easy to pay off.
Yeah.
I mean, there are philosophical differences, and I think that on Next Generation that would have been very difficult to do because you're sort of moving around all the time, and your dilemmas are of the week. But when you have them on DS9, where you're on the station and you're dealing with the same people day after day, and you have non-Starfleet, not half your cast, but quite a bit of the cast and quite a bit of the station residents are not Starfleet. We have Bajoran militia, we have people passing through. So Quark has been a fixture on DS9 since it was Tarek Noor, since the Kardashians were in charge.
Right, exactly.
And he's not leaving. So to have him come into conflict with our other characters over philosophical differences, especially as they do in this episode.
Right.
Because he's, like I was saying, so entrenched in this Ferengi philosophy of, profit over all and exploit your family and, those ways of dehumanizing people and treating them as less than, as labor that you can just sort of suck out the labor and offer very little in return. And it grinds people down and it harms people. And we see a lot of that in the demands that were given by the writers union and the actors unions in this particular strike, which thankfully is over now and has come out on the side of the creatives that make these things work, that make the TV and movie industry actually go. And I'm so glad for that. I'm so glad that, it's not a perfect arrangement, but it is beneficial. And just the same way as that again, it's not a perfect arrangement in the culmination of this episode, but it's better. There's progress being made, and it kind of shows that Quark, for all of his shortcomings, does care. He does want to help. He, deep down inside, there's a heart in there, and it's there's hope, and that's a very Star Trek thing, is to have hope and progress, and to say, we can be better than what we are now. And with the Ferengi being created as a reflection of specifically 1980s America, but as it goes
big
on,
time.
It's that same reflection of who we are now too. And we see that on Lower Decks as well as the Ferengi, as a reflection of now, where you charge for everything, and there's a paywall, and but there's progress there too, because we have Grand Angus rum, and spoilers for DS9, spoilers for Lower Decks, but like we have progress, and we have Rom who had the seed of this progress in this particular episode, and how that carries forward into really revitalizing and altering Ferengi society. Moogie had her part to do with this too, but it's all inspired by Chief Miles O'Brien, the most important
person in Starfleet history.
Well,
I absolutely love the end of the episode when you're like, when Rom walks back into the bar and he says one snail juice or whatever it is he orders, and he's dressed in a Bajoran workers uniform, Bajoran engineer's uniform. It's actually kind of weird coloring that I don't think we'd seen before, so it was kind of made for him, and it's great. So you would think, oh, he won this great victory, and then they, out of left field, pulled this great character development moment for him where he says, hey, you know what, if anything, I've learned that I do better when you're not around. He says to his brother. I'm like, you know what, that's also very endemic of what it's like for siblings. I have a brother I don't speak to, because ultimately anytime I was around him, he treated me like shit, talked to me like I was stupid, and made me feel crappy about myself. So that's not a relationship that I choose to engage with in my life. It's a little more personal than I would usually get. But you know what? Unfortunately, Quark and Rom aren't quite that way, even though Quark is really shitty to Rom and Rom takes it. This was exactly. This was a very sitcom-y way of them finding a way to, hey, with some distance, I think it's going to be Rom's. I think it'll be really good for our relationship. You know what I mean? Or family members that work together, for example, like, I come from a family business, and I know there was a time that my dad worked for his dad, and my dad did that all grown up, and it was terrible. And for a while, my uncle worked for my dad, and I don't think that was so ideal. So the family ties and this whole bar association deal. Yeah, there's a lot of this doing what Star Trek does the very best, which is taking that bent of a sci-fi lens and fictional characters and looking at things that affect all of us in real life. So, Aaron, please, your thoughts. Any favorite moments from the episode to bring up?
Well, I mean, absolutely that part with Rom at the end when he walks in and he quits after getting everything he wants from Quark. That was such a baller power move.
Big time.
Hats off to the guy for that. And that's one of the things that I really love about DS9. Now, mind you, I grew up watching DS9.
Yeah.
So this stuff was, I love the show. And one thing that sets it apart from a lot of the other Star Trek episodes, was the first one to really do serialized stories. And they had such unprecedented character development for each and every one of the characters. I mean, even Rom, who for the most part was, kind of a C-list character on the show for the most part, they just gave him so much development, and he grew so much over the course of the show. Kind of like with Star Trek and Voyager, you'd have an episode and you'd have these characters dealing with these life-altering circumstances. But then by the end of the episode, everything goes back to the status quo.
And on to the next one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what made Deep Space Nine so special because there were ramifications from everything that these characters did,
Big time.
and especially with Rom, because he went from being under his brother's thumb to as you said, eventually becoming the Grand Nagus and everything, and it's just absolutely incredible, and it's one of the things I really love, and I feel made the show special, especially for its time. Just absolutely amazing.
Big time. I was just reading over the episode summary, as we always include. I did love the middle part with you have Bashir and O'Brien standing on the second level, doing the guessing game of who's going to go in and who's going to do business with
who's
Quark.
Who's going to cross the picket line?
Yeah, who's going to cross the picket line? So they see a Vulcan officer walk by. Nope, their sense of ethics definitely on the side of labor. And then they see Worf walk in, and they're like, "Wait!" And then it cuts to the next scene, and they're sitting in a holding cell, and so you get this after scene, and you just love to see Dr. Bashir, he got thrown over a table. Well, he was more pushed, and it was kind of Bashir's got a big scratch on his head, and you're like, that's just fun. That's just just kind of overall because they put more fun into DS9, and I think it really evolved as we got through the later seasons and in the interplay with the characters. So I really enjoyed that, and those three guys had to be in that holding cell overnight together. It always seems very problematic. What if somebody wants to go to the bathroom? There's one bench, so how do they sleep? Well, I'm sure Worf sleeps standing up. Maybe maybe with his arms crossed, hanging from boots like Batman or something. I don't know. But yeah, it was great. This was our I think our second appearance of the phenomenal Jeffrey Combs, whom I've met several times, and is just a really great guy, as Liquidator Brunt. And we get our second appearance of the Nausicaans, who are, Klingons are scary and they're warriors, but the Nausicaans are just nasty. Don't make any sense. They're so much more uber violent than most of the other villainous species we get. And they're just really played for, like Johnny Legbreaker in this, because they beat the they shatter Quark's face to make an example out of him, and but they don't. It's funny, they have varying levels of language skills, because when we meet them, which it was a scene set in the past, season 6 of TNG of Tapestry, when we see the incident where Picard got his artificial heart, which was when he graduated from the academy, so some 50 years prior. They speak really broken English, but when we see them again in the first season of Enterprise, they speak totally normal English. And I think in this, they don't really speak much at all, maybe just some grunts and stuff. So I don't know, maybe the guys from the TNG episode were just rednecks or something. I don't know. The guy we saw in Enterprise was a Rhodes Scholar. I have no idea. Rhodes Scholar Nausicaan. That could be a name. That could be a name for the episode. But yeah, no, I thought it was pretty cool. Let me see if I can type in Rhodes Scholar Nausicaan while you guys are talking.
There's that scene where Brunt is talking to Quark, and the Nausicaans are just in the back, and they've got the darts from the dartboard, and they've made their own game. They're just throwing darts at each other. And
oh my God.
Why? What is the goal?
They're playing that punch for the Rochambeau. Was that from South Park? I'll kick you in the nuts as hard as I can, and then you kick me in the nuts as hard as you can.
We'll play hints as to what Nausicaan culture must actually be like. I wonder if maybe Lower Decks will stop on Nausicaa next season and give them more depth, like we did with Orion this past season.
There was that clip where Mariner is talking like very briefly about the Nausicans. It's like, what's a Nausicaan? They're like, oh, they're this warrior race that's really obsessed with Dabo, even though they're really bad at it for some reason.
Damjat, not Dabo.
Damjat, sorry.
Yes, yeah. Which Damjat, that's a weird game too. It's like you have a clicker like laser pointer that shoots a ball in like a tabletop thing with like water on it.
Billiards.
But it's wet. Wet space billiards. Boom, got it. Wet space billiards. Keep talking. I'm typing. Go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like a fun game. I used to play billiards all the time. I don't know if I don't want to play a Nausicaan at it, though.
Not the way they talk and throw darts at each other. Absolutely not. So, well, cool. All right. Any other favorite moments or final thoughts as we start to wind this down and then jump into the other episodes that we're going to talk about DS9?
No, it's just really, really great episode, really topical. Like I said, it's great seeing all the character development, and it's just so layered. And that's just absolutely fantastic, and such a credit to the writing team that worked on this show.
Who do you think the main bad guy is in the SAG-AFTRA WGA strike that you would like put in the role of like Brunt for this? Like, who had the nastiest things to say after the strike? One guy said, "Oh, we paid too much." Was that the guy from the Apple, or it wasn't the guy from Viacom? It was probably the Disney guy. Who's the Disney guy?
Bob Iger.
Yeah, didn't he have something really shitty to say? Like,
some really bad.
Like after the strike was over, he was like, "Yeah,
even
we really overpaid."
Like, and he's like on his yacht and saying these things like
he's a Ferengi,
and I'm like,
really, dude, you would have no job, no job.
It's almost like Quark's whole thing is a little bit more understandable in some way because yes, he's hoarding it, but he's a small business owner. He's not the FCA. The FCA is the real like bad guy here, right? It's Brunt and the FCA and the people who are actually like hoarding the money. I from Quark's perspective, he's just sort of trying to eke out his own business here, and he's just doing it by the ways that he knows how to do it with the rules of acquisition and the Ferengi greed that colors everything, because he's the guy who wants to be what the AMPTP was here. He wants to be, because he feels that there's value in that. He's drunk the Kool-Aid, right? He's the one.
He's had his snail juice.
He's a small business owner who's going to be like, I'm gonna vote for the business owner who made it all the way to the top here, and I'm gonna, because that could be me someday. And it's like, it's never gonna be you. It doesn't work that way. That's not how capitalism actually works. It requires somebody to be hoarding the wealth in order to grow and expand. And it's like, you can only expand so far and so much before the people who are putting the work in can't, like, it's just not sustainable because you're trying to, charge more and more for things while paying people less and less and expecting more and more work out of them in order to make that expansive profit, as opposed to just like being satisfied with, making a profit at all that you can continue to operate. And I almost feel like Quark just wants to continue to be able to operate, but he does so with the attitude of the guy who's like on top of the pile.
Right.
Trying to exploit people and squeeze people because he thinks that's right, because that's what Ferengi society values.
Right.
And
acquire, Brock, acquire.
Yeah.
Ferengi children's books. I love it.
Yeah.
Good deal. Aaron, any parting glance from you?
No, I was just thinking about, as you were saying about the whole, the promise of ascension. I definitely encountered that in my own history. And that's very relatable because, I worked for 3 or 4 other companies before striking out and starting on my own. And I definitely felt like that was always a thing. Like, there's always that carrot that they hold out for you, and if it, more often than not, that turned out to be, just empty promises. Yeah. And I just got frustrated. I'm like, all right, I got to strike out on my own. That's when I started my company. And I don't regret that. And I definitely see a lot of that in Rom. And I never thought I'd see Rom as a relatable character, but in this instance, I got to say, I definitely see where he was coming from on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Good deal. All right. Good chat, you guys. I love it. So, Jen, thanks for the idea. I appreciate having an episode that we can really drill down on. As I said, in future weeks in segment 1, we're going to focus probably on going back to a segment that Jen and I had this past spring, summer, which was between us picking a good episode and a bad episode and kind of doing a little compare contrast. And as there's a group of, 4 or 5 of us, depending on who's going to be on, we'll probably tackle that until we get to Discovery. But in the next segment, or in the next episode, I should say, I'm going to reveal it now, if that's okay with you guys, because I've been talking about it for a long time. But we know that with Strange New Worlds, we've now had a recasting of over half of the TOS characters. So we have a Kirk, we have a Spock, we have a Scotty, we have an Uhura, we have a Chapel. So we'll call it the original is the original 8? Because Chapel was kind of, she was kind of
they're kind of not,
yeah,
Linda, who was in a couple of episodes,
right?
He's a main character,
Right? Exactly. But at least with Chapel, we saw her in all 3 seasons of TOS. So that leaves us a Sulu, a Chekhov, and a McCoy uncast. So what we're going to do, participants of the next episode, is we're going to come forward with our own dream castings for those 3 characters of actors that we're familiar with. So that is going to be our segment 1 in our next episode. So sharpen your pencils, you 2 guys, and then Peter being back on, and potentially Kay, potentially Miss. We've not seen them in a while, but I'm going to certainly extend the invitation. And we will do that then. So, but anyway, before we do that, we're going to slide into segment 2, and we're going to continue to talk about season 4 of Deep Space Nine. I think this might be the first episode we've ever had where it's just been about one show. And it's certainly the first one where it's just been about one season of one show. But yeah, we're getting into part 3 of 4 of season 4 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And Aaron, as you are our esteemed guest, I'm going to give you the chance to do episode 86. So what we typically do, we read the details going across the top line, and then we read the summary, and then you give your take. So go for it. Or Jen can go first if you'd like to hear how it goes.
Oh, I think I would like Aaron to go first.
Okay.
All right.
I need to thank you very much. Happy to do so. Let me bring it up here.
Or I'll tell you what. I'll go.
Okay.
I'll go. You bring it up. All right. Episode 86 is episode 14 of the season is Return to Grace. Directed by Jonathan West. Story is Tom Benko, and teleplay is Hans Beimler, who's a regular to the series from February of 1996. Dukat seeks Kira's help in regaining his rank in the Cardassian Union. So kind of a cool episode. You're jamming together 2 characters who are at odds. One who desperately seeks the love, and I see Jen's skin crawling thinking about Gul Dukat. But you're dealing with Gul Dukat, who's the creepiest of the creepies, a guy whose motivation 99% of the time you're pretty sure he's a bad guy, but then I found my daughter, I love my daughter, decided not to kill her, which happened a couple of episodes prior to this. But as it turns out, Kira is hitching a ride with Dukat, who's now a lowly freighter captain, to an outpost where she's going to contribute something to a mission about Bajoran intelligence, blah, blah, blah. Also aboard the freighter is Dukat's daughter, who also is in exile, kind of quasi-exile with him. When they get to the outpost, they find out that the Cardassians and the Bajoran who were there were killed by Klingons, who the Klingons kind of blow them off and drift away. But Dukat's super pissed. He's like, I got to find a way to kill these Klingons. And which, with Kira's help, he does. They grab a phaser. They cripple this ship. They do this transporter swap out with them. And then Dukat takes over the ship and says, I'm now going to be a freedom fighter with my one ship going around blowing up Klingons and stuff. I'm going to become Kira. And he says, Kira, please join me. And then what happens? Jen, your thoughts?
She's like, hell no. Like,
yeah. Did she even think about it? I did not.
Are you out of your mind? Like, do you realize who you're talking to? But no, Dukat doesn't. That's the thing. He's so single-minded in everything that he does, because all he wants is to get back to where he was, back on top of that pile, back to, because he was the administrator of Tarek Norn, and he's trying to get back, return to Grace, but
big man on campus.
Grace, he thinks that he has the right idea to do that. He thinks he knows exactly how it's going to work, not recognizing that things changed. He failed. He's not as great as he thinks he is. But that's what makes him a compelling character too. I've met this guy. Here's the thing, I know this guy. I think I worked for this guy, honestly. But anyway,
we all have. Oh my God. Are you serious?
It's like, you are so out of touch with what reality is. And you think Kira's going to work for you? after this, you think this is going to get you back in the good graces of the Cardassian government and get you back to where you were when you were never really there in the first place? Because like Eric Nor was not like, you know, the best assignment ever either. It's Dukat is just he's one of those characters that I love to hate. Same as Kai Wynn. Like DS9 has just these great compelling characters that exist as foils for our Starfleet officers, the way that Wynn and to an extent later Dukat are foils for Sisko. Dukat is a foil for Kira here. He's trying to be what she was in order to get her to like, do you like me? Check yes or no.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm now, you know, I'm doing the thing that you were doing.
Passing notes in class.
Now, and she's like,
yeah, right.
Absolutely not. I'm going
like,
to
bruv.
Yeah. You are so far removed from reality.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, spoilers, but like he continues to get even further removed from reality as the series goes on, and it's great to watch.
Yeah, until he literally cracks like an eggshell after everything goes upsy daisy. You know, at the early part of season 6. Yeah,
but he's so like earnest about it. Like he still believes that he's in the right, and he's slimy, and he's I mean, props to Marco Lamo for making this character who he is.
The villain never thinks they're the villain. They just think that they're right. Look at every classic fascist animal who's ever existed on Earth, and we don't need to name any names, but we know who we're talking about. Scary stuff. Aaron.
Well, you know, I gotta say, I don't condone his actions or his choices as a character. He's a completely irredeemable creep, especially in this episode. But I love Gul Dukat like so much. Whenever I see he's going to be in an episode, I know I'm going to have a good time. I love picking this guy's brain apart. Like he literally suffers from main character syndrome. He's the embodiment of main character syndrome. He literally thinks he's the hero of the show every second he's on that screen, and it's I love it, and he's just he like, as you said, he's so completely delusional. I love this one part at the end where Kira's trying to explain to him, you can't do this. You have a whole army that you're going up against, and you have one bird of prey with a skeleton crew. You don't stand a chance. And he's just like, what? Why not? I can take on the whole army.
Come on. Yeah. Haven't you seen Star Wars? I'm Luke Skywalker. Woo! I mean, come on. Seriously.
Right?
Yeah. Look at me in my X-Wing. Bro, oh my God.
He's so arrogant. I love it.
He thinks he's in a TV show. That's what it is. He thinks he's in a TV show.
And the one thing that really, really shows you the quality of the character of in terms of where his mindset is Kira's like, your daughter is here. You can't bring her into this, and it's
I can't. What?
Yeah, the thought that he was putting his daughter in mortal danger never entered his mind.
Yeah, but she'll be good.
Despite his claims to love her.
Yeah.
I didn't kill her before. That means I must love her.
Yeah,
right.
No, you're putting her in mortal danger right now.
Right.
This very second. Like,
I mean, he wants the Silver Star for not being as big a jerk as he could have been. You know,
work. He is the embodiment of one of my favorite memes that I'd like to use is from The Simpsons. Bart Simpson picking up the cake that says, "At least you tried." He walks over and dumps it in the trash. That's Gul Dukat. He's the Bart Simpson cake. At least you tried. Oh my God. No, good stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man, oh man.
I have often said Gul Dukat is my favorite Star Trek villain, and I stand by that. He's just so interesting.
I don't know that I could disagree. I've never really thought about it because your mind goes to Khan is blah blah blah, Wrath of Khan, and Gul Dukat is where Khan is very kind of one sided, and he gets
I don't know a Khan, you know.
But everybody knows Dukat.
I know a Win. I know they're more insidious because they're so much more relatable.
Right. It's almost too much so. Yeah, very much so. All right. Well, let's move on. Are you now, Aaron, ready to take on giving us the summary of episode 15?
I got it. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
All right. So episode 15, The Sons of Moog. Let's see here. by we got David
Right.
Livingston on this. Yep. Ronald D. Moore. First aired February 10th, 1996. And the summary for the episode: cast out of Klingon society because of Worf's dishonor, his brother Kurn asks Worf to kill him. Kira and O'Brien investigate a mysterious high-energy discharge just outside Bajoran space.
Ooh, I love that dramatic reading.
Thank you.
I feel invested now. I'm into it.
Thank you so much. So yeah, no, this was a really good episode. Like it said, it starts with Dax and Worf are inside the holodeck doing some flirtatious, aggressive training, where they're talking about warriors being arrogant and everything, and it was a cute little back and forth between them that kind of sets up the concept of, the arrogance of warriors. Very, very good use of foreshadowing for the episode. Of course, they're interrupted by Odo, who says that Worf has a guest. There is a drunk Klingon who is causing security some problems. He needs to go check it out. And he goes and discovers it's his brother Kurn, who we haven't seen in quite a while. Kurn, of course, had a high seat on the Klingon console for a while. And in a recent episode, Worf had turned his back on Gowron because he found Gowron's tactics to be questionable and dishonorable.
Right. Season premiere. Yeah.
Right. So he refused to participate. And as a result, Gowron takes it out on his brother by stripping him of his lands and his title and casting him out in front of the emperor and absolutely dishonoring him. So Kurn feels the only way he can find his redemption is by having Worf kill him.
Yep.
In a ritualistic Klingon ceremony, which, of course, Worf is conflicted about. Meanwhile, we've got Kira and O'Brien, who are coming back from a trip with checking on the Bajoran colonies, and they discover a mysterious explosion in space. And they decide to go check that out, but they're stopped by a Klingon ship that tells them not to come any further and stay away because they're doing training exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, you always hear training exercise. There's something else going on.
Right. They're training for some badness. So this was a definite connection to the TNG Season 5 ethics, where Worf's spine is broken when a cargo container falls on him. And it's the same thing. He asks Riker to help him die in a very similar. I don't know that it's the same ceremony. The Klingons got a lot of different weird ass ceremonies, but this one is the most similar to that one in my opinion. And Riker says, dude, I can't do that. Technically it's gotta be your son, even though he's 10 years older. In Klingon years he was 10, and real years he was 2, because that's how aging happens on TV back then. But but Worf was like, all right, dude, let's do this thing. But Dax figures it out by hook or by crook and stops him from doing it. And so the two of them, one of the best scenes, I think, the two of them, Dax and Worf, get hauled into the principal's office, and Cisco just chews their they didn't have any ass left when they left that room, because he said, unless you hadn't noticed, those are not Klingon uniforms you're wearing, and this is not a Klingon station. So it was a Klingon thing doesn't really cut the mustard with me. So figure out a way for your brother not to kill himself, or you're all out of here. Okay, and then Kurn kind of does his best. He tries to go to work for Odo, but then he tries to commit on the job suicide by throwing himself in front of some dude's gun. And so at the end of it, Kurn is just left right back where he started from. I have no life, and I have no life. I can't go to Stovall. I won't see father there, mother and father there, and blah, blah, blah. And so they have to do a very Star Trek-y thing in order to resolve it, is that Bashir does the mind wipe thing, which he's good at it. Beverly sucked at it, but Dr. Pulaski was great at it in TNG. So even though Bev was head of Starfleet Medical, she's maybe there's one doctor
plot reasons,
maybe there's one doctor who I'm not good at this one thing, memory stuff is just not
perfect at everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Honestly, for Beverly, it was plot reasons a lot of the time.
Very true. Very true. They change Kurn into Lagra or Loggins, Kenny Loggins. They change him into Kenny Loggins, the Danger Zone. No, nobody. Okay, all right. Oh, tough room. Okay, and then they send. danger zone, and they send him on his merry way. So this episode is just kind of another like, wow, it just fucking sucks to be Worf. Now he doesn't even have any family. So yeah, being Worf is coming to DS9 for Worf has been a real shit show. Nothing good is working out so far. So, but I like it. This was it was a big jump forward in the Dax Worf relationship, which doesn't turn into a romance until early next season. But yeah, I thought this was good Worf stuff. I met Tony Todd only in passing. The person who really met him, because he was a guest at our Grand Rapids Comic-Con back in 2019, was April, my wife. He came to the booth when I was in the bathroom or doing something, and he chatted. I think he hit on her, and then he sat in the captain's chair and took a couple of pictures. She said he remarkably smelled like marijuana. So that's my impression of Tony Todd. But I love the man's work. Love Candyman, right? The Chicago classic right there, Jen. I think I mentioned it during Shocktober. Not a movie you probably want to see if you don't enjoy horror movies, because it's horrible. It's horrifying. So anyway, Jen, your thoughts?
The thing that I like about this one is that it does show, like in Bar Association, the contrast between the values of Starfleet and the Federation and the culture and of an alien culture. And Quark can continue to sort of operate as is because he's Ferengi, and they sort of look the other way, and they sort of they do come across and they do clash against that. But Sisko's point of Worf being a Starfleet officer first and foremost sometimes clashes against what Worf believes himself to be, because Worf is, imagining himself as the Klingoniest Klingon ever, almost in order to make up for the fact that he's raised by humans, right? So it's like Worf's book knowledge of Klingons in the ceremony is what makes that take so much more precedence in his head, because he has this desire to prove himself. So he's going to go, I have to do the thing. I have to do the Klingon thing, even when it conflicts with the Federation values. And that was the interesting moral quandary for me and for him in this episode as well, because it's like, what do you do then? And, Sisko, in no uncertain terms, saying, find another way, does make this almost more heartbreaking, really, than if you just killed him, because he's out there somewhere, but you can't have any contact with him. He has to just sort of forget about him.
Right.
It's a happy ending.
I mean, in so much that Kern's not dead, and he can go on and he can be free of dishonor. He can have a new life, whatever it is. Kind of weird that, because the guy who is the co-conspirator in this is Kern's new dad, who's an older Klingon guy who was one of Moog, who was their Worf and Kern's dad. It was one of his old buddies who agreed to it. But don't you think an old school Klingon would be like, I'm not going to agree to this. You're dishonored. But I don't know. Rules get bent where rules.
Debt.
Yeah, there you go. Always, that's the ultimate Klingon plot armor. Well, I owe you a debt, so I guess I'll kill these 10 people for you, but whatever, it's cool.
So
it's the rules. But yeah, good stuff. All right, Jen, you are up for episode 17.
Episode 17, Accession. Directed by Les Landau, written by Jane Espenson. From February 24th, 1996.
The day after my 20th birthday. Sorry. Quick aside.
A famous Bajoran poet, Akoram Lan, who disappeared over 200 years ago, appears from the wormhole and convinces Sisko that he is the true emissary. But when he announces a return to the pre-occupation caste system, Sisko points out it would disqualify Bajor from membership in the Federation. O'Brien is less than enthusiastic when Keiko announces she's expecting.
Whoops. He keeps a somewhat tight lid on it. It's funny because in all the episodes where they're like, Keiko's such a bitch, she treats him so bad, she actually doesn't really bust his nuts about this. Because usually she's like, oh, Keiko's such a shrew because she's given there's that school of thought out there, right? People who really down on Keiko.
I disagree with it, but
I don't think she's so bad at all. I also don't agree with that. But even with this, he's like, well, having another baby. So it's interesting. And obviously it's like a B. It's like a B minus B story. It's so small. Compared to the A story. But anyway, back to you. I just thought I'd jump in because I thought, people trashing Keiko, whatever.
Again, with the contrast between a cultural thing and a Federation thing. And it's like, this is one of the driving factors in Sisko accepting his position as emissary, which is it's a whole series long journey for him
Yeah.
to do. And this is one of the major steps in him taking it into consideration and accepting it. It's, contrasting with in the beginning where he's sort of begrudgingly performing the duties that they're asking him to do as emissary. He's like, well, I might as well. They want him to do it. He doesn't really want to. He doesn't really see himself as the emissary. He's glad when this guy comes through. He's like, you want the job? Cool, take it. I don't want the job. I don't. Why? I'm a human. Why should I have this job for the Bajoran people? It should be a Bajoran, right? So he is happy to kind of let go of that. Nonetheless, you have Kira, who's still wanting to believe in Sisko, but kind of going along with, all right, we're going back to the caste system. I'm supposed to be an artist, and I'm not that good at it.
I love her. Oh, that's a very rare Kira Nerys original where it's like her flock of flightless birds because she's trying to make. They're just looks like something that your kindergarten goes, look, Daddy, I made you. Back in our day, I made you an ashtray because it's the kind of thing you could make.
You don't have the training from the caste system being a thing,
or any talent, God-given talent, like artists have. Yeah, exactly. This is why everybody's not an artist because some people are
practice.
Yes, exactly. But some of it, I'm sure, comes from men born. You know what I mean? But
Right. And it's better for people to be able to choose their own way, right? It's better for people to have some freedom and some say in what they do. And that is, ironically, what convinces Sisko to take the position back. And the interesting thing is that when the poet does go back, all of a sudden his poems are completed because the prophet sent him back to a different time because the prophets exist outside of time and just some weird, neat, wibbly wobbly stuff that came from that. And like Kira sort of remembering the original timeline because she has a part in this too. And
yeah, that was pretty cool.
Neat stuff.
I like that part. The actor who played a Coram Lan, quick little sidebar because it's funny. I'll tell you exactly who he is, though it may not help you. I turned around and I watched this movie immediately after because it's one of my all-time favorites. He is Fletch's boss in the 1985 movie Fletch with Chevy Chase, the newspaper editor, the Frank. I don't know. I love that movie. I was raised on. I got a big nod out of Aaron, and it kind of seems like Jen's like, okay. Yeah. It was a big deal if you were an 80s kid. It was because it was just one of those comedies. So when Chevy Chase was funny and he wasn't a total jackass, or he was less of a jackass because apparently he's always him being a jackass is not something from the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. But Richard Libertini is the actor's name, and I'm sure. And again, as an actor, you've seen him in the last 50 years. Probably you've caught him in a lot of this and that. But yeah, this is really great. And again, it goes right up there against, a caste system is right along there with, people who are very strict in their religion. I can, my religion says X, Y, Z, or, something from it would be, if somebody from the 1700s came back or a physician from the 14th century came back and said, why aren't we treating things with leeches or whatever? I mean, you know what I mean? There are certain, it's a modern problems call for modern solutions. Well, the modern problem that the Bajorans had is that, hey, we're an occupied people. Everybody's going to give up doing, this caste-based BS, and we're all going to pick up arms so that we don't die. And then, that fundamentally changed our society. We didn't go back because you know what? Who we are versus who we were 75 years ago when there were no Cardassians is fundamentally changed, and you can't turn back the clock. And that's what this dude can't really wrap his head around because he's like, nope, if we don't
them to go back to a place that doesn't exist anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you can't live in the past, which is something I'm sure all of us have people in our life who really don't understand that. We all have family members or friends like that who just want to live in the past. And boy, I remember when bread was a nickel and it's just life just doesn't work that way. So
reality is different. So
yeah, exactly.
You have someone who's out of touch with reality. I mean, there's a definite theme going through this chunk of episodes, and I think that is, something DS9 does really well. Is Voyager to some extent too, and we'll get to that when we get to Voyager's season 4 and 5, which I think are really good at staying on theme. But DS9 from the jump has really embraced the idea of thematic storytelling and keeping seasons sort of on a theme, whether intentional or not. You see
Yeah.
these patterns echoed throughout, chunks of episodes, and the way that we've broken it up is such that each chunk that we have kind of has a little bit of each, threads from each different theme kind of running through it. I think that's really cool. It's one of the things that makes it so cohesive. Especially on a rewatch when you're watching, 6 episodes at once.
Right, and that's why I love doing it in this this fashion, because we don't get super granular. Though it was super cool to do that with Bar Association because it really tied in. But I love having these, 5-minute touches between 3 people on an episode. Speaking of which, Aaron, your turn. Thoughts?
Yeah, I find myself. I'm very inquisitive. I'm always asking questions, especially when it comes to religion. And after watching this episode, I find that holds true to fictional religion as well as real life religion, because while I was watching it, I was trying to guess what the prophets were thinking with this whole setup. And even when they go and they eventually confront them and they just straight up ask them, what was this about? And their response is, oh, this is for the Cisco.
Right.
That's
the anointed one. Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean by that? And that's what I was obsessing over after watching this episode. Like, were they trying to teach him a lesson? Were they trying to give him a vacation? Like he refers to it in the episode as it feels like he was on vacation, even though he still got to deal, with Starfleet, the war, and all this other stuff going on, which was really interesting. And part of me just wonders how much of that did the writers plan out, and how much of it were they just like, well, we'll just say prophets work in mysterious ways and call it a day.
I mean, it's true. I will definitely say I think this was more they were trying to teach him a lesson. Like, hey, you know what? You have doubts about why you're doing this. Look what would happen if we took this jack off from 200 years ago and gave him the job, and he's like, everybody should be using leeches or what the hell ever. You know what I mean? And so, yeah.
It could be both. It's a lesson through a vacation. Sometimes when you have something that's thrust on you, or it feels like it's thrust on you, you have to stop doing it for a while in order to make it feel like it is your choice to do.
Right.
Because he did not feel like it was his choice to be the emissary. He didn't want to do it.
Right.
But when he is actively choosing to take on the job, his perspective on it changes, and his role within that title changes because he's embracing it now.
Right.
Not to the extent that he will eventually, but like he's a little bit more on board with himself being the emissary.
Yeah.
After this one,
it's interesting. I don't know if they even had a word for this when it first came out, but he definitely struggles with imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Cool. All right. Well, good. Let's move on to. Boy, I was really riveted watching this episode, not only back in 1996, but even watching it again. This was when I was sitting in my COVID sick bed earlier this week. I was like, ooh. Episode 18 is Rules of Engagement, directed by LeVar Burton. So boom, right there. Ended up being a great one, though. LeVar has directed some episodes, I think even earlier this season or last season, that we didn't enjoy so much. So sometimes it's the material, but he just does such a great job. Story is David Weddle and Bradley Thompson, 2 regulars on the writing staff, and teleplay by the exceptional Ron Moore, one of my Star Trek heroes. From April of 1996, Worf accidentally destroys a civilian ship during a battle and faces a hearing to determine whether he should be extradited to the Klingon Empire. Ooh, the court-martial, the trial. I spent most of this episode also studying the Vulcan JAG officer who was presiding over it, because in SD it gets so fuzzy that I couldn't tell if she was a 4- or a 5-star admiral, which we never really see. 5-star admiral, that would be like the top dude, but she's 4-star admiral because I did and studied it and pulled it up on screen and stuff. But that's about as high ranking as you get. So this is really for the big leagues. But super cool episode. There was a movie right around this time, I think it was a couple years later, starring Samuel L. Jackson, who was kind of in a similar situation. He was an Army officer, and he was in a trial, and he had the famous line, yes, I hope they die, and I hope they burn in hell. Anybody remember that line? Anybody? Yeah. No, Jen's like, I don't watch your stupid movie. Stop it.
I did not say that.
No, but I'm using my finely honed Betazoid telepathic senses. No, I'm just kidding. But this was great. What a great character study for Worf, because he's going along, and yes, ultimately what happened in this plot line is that he was duped. You had a Klingon basically conspiracy, and then you had a skeevy Klingon lawyer who was trying to make it look like he killed a bunch of people he didn't kill, because ultimately the civilian ship he destroyed in this battle situation, the whole thing was a fake out. The ship was empty. So nobody died. But this guy wanted to discredit Worf. He wanted to discredit the Federation so that these convoys to this particular area would stop. Great work by Odo was pivotal because he was working behind the scenes, figuring everything out. Sisko was great as Worf's defense attorney, which is I always love seeing people in dress uniforms too. So you get it's more colorful and it looks more like TNG, which everybody loves TNG uniforms. It's kind of cool to see those bust out because the dress uniforms at this point were just carryovers. I love it. They also use that great. I was reading in the notes and an old technique where when someone is having a flashback or something from the past is being told, someone will kind of break the fourth wall and jump out of the scene and start talking like they were talking, but they're still in the same setting. I thought that was cool. O'Brien did that a couple times. Worf did it. Quark did it. I love Quark's aside in the bar where he's trying to remember something, but Bashir was sitting there and he was talking to this certain Dabo girl, or was he talking to this other Dabo girl? Was he talking to this third Dabo girl? No. It was Morn talking to this fourth Dabo girl, and he turns to her and he says, and Ch'pak, who is the slimy Klingon lawyer played by actor Ron Canada, who is another that guy who's seen a ton of stuff, says, "Can we get back to the point at hand, please?" So still finding ways to inject humor into a very serious situation. And I do love at the end of it, Sisko and Worf's interaction at the end, where Sisko dresses him down and he said, we're Starfleet. We don't put civilians' lives on the line no matter what, even if it costs us our own lives. And Worf goes, well, life is very much more difficult in this red uniform. And Sisko's great line. Anybody want to jump in and say it? I don't have to say it. He says, "Wait till you have 4 pips on that collar. You'd wish you'd gone into botany." It's just a win. I love it. This may be my favorite of the pack. So It's good stuff. Jen, your thoughts?
It's this, like you were saying, a character study for Worf and him trying to, how Worf always wants to prove himself as a Klingon. And in this case, proving himself as a Klingon is the wrong answer.
Right.
It is the thing that's going to get him more trouble and get not just himself, but the rest of Starfleet kind of in trouble for this. And
yeah, big time.
I use the term in trouble loosely. It's far more than that.
Yeah, right.
But there's so much that hangs on what he believes about himself and whether he is going to admit to this particular thought or this particular thought. And one of the thoughts marks him as very Klingon, and the other thought marks him as very Starfleet. And Worf has always had this war in himself between these two sides of himself, is where is his affiliation and what does he truly believe? And how this comes out is that he is Starfleet, right?
Right.
But he is still also a Klingon, and he's finding ways to balance that. And that harkens back to our first episode of the season, Way of the Warrior, where he's stuck between these two worlds, but that becomes an asset to him there, as opposed to here, where it's a little bit more rocky. I thought it is a tense episode, as most of these courtroom episodes of Star Trek are, but it is a great one for Worf and his character study and where this eventually evolves for him.
Most def. Aaron.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta tell you, I'm a sucker for procedural law shows, and I was
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, please continue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I found myself yelling at the screen an awful lot while watching this because, like, the lawyer, just his whole strategy was just straight up character assassination.
Yeah, right.
And some of the stuff that he was calling, I was just yelling at the screen. That's hearsay. no, that is not admissible. That's circumstantial evidence. Like I was the whole episode. And,
nice.
And the admiral I even yelled at one point because like she was like it was getting really heated between the Klingon lawyer and Worf. And she's like, if you keep this up, I'll hold you in contempt. And like she warns him like 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, do it. Drop the hammer on him. Put court-martial him. Yeah. And then that all escalated. And I was like, that's on the judge. You know, just the whole thing. I was just critiquing the whole case.
The whole system's out of order.
Yeah. It's like I want to see your Bill of Rights right now. You know, it's like.
Oh my goodness.
That was the fun part of the episode. And then, of course, seeing Cisco and his that whole end scene was just incredible, like you said, with the 4 pips line and way he comes in, he's like, "Hey, we're having a party," and then Worf's like, "I don't feel like I deserve a party," and Cisco's like, "Yeah," and then he's like, "You're right, you don't deserve the party. Do you know why?" And like that whole bit was just so great.
I do love, and it's funny. This kind of comes back to all the way up in season 7 when Ezri becomes Dax, and she's sharing some stuff with Cisco. She says, "No, don't talk to Worf for me. You intimidate him," and which is such a great. I remember hearing, and again, we're in season 7 when that reveal comes around, but it's probably reasons like this, like he's dressing him down to Worf's like, "Yes, sir," you know, he's like, he's Worf. Here's a guy who almost took off Picard's head at the end of First Contact because Picard called him a wimp, you know, so. It's pretty crazy stuff. Oh, all right. Well, let's move along. Let's take it home with the episode 19. Aaron, I think you're up, so take us away.
Okay. Episode 19, Hard Time. It's written by, let's see here. We got directed by Alexander Singer. Story by Daniel Keyes, Moran and Lynn Barker. Teleplay by Robert Hewitt Wolf. And the original air date for this was April 13th, 1996. And the synopsis for this episode: O'Brien's mind has been altered to create memories of being incarcerated for 20 years on an alien world on charges of espionage and sedition.
Oh, my God. Continuing a long legacy of beating the crap out of engineers. And this is late in the 4th season of DS9. This is happening. Late in the 4th season of TNG was an episode that Jen and I talked about that long ago, that that Geordi was kidnapped by Romulans and they did the same thing. What's the deal with the gold suit in the 24th century that everybody's getting their ass whooped? So anyway.
Because the gold suit replaced the red one.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, but the red suits, they just killed them. But then again, but it's engineers. Scotty to Geordi, now to O'Brien. Poor Trip Tucker died at the end of Enterprise, supposedly.
No,
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
Anyway.
O'Brien must suffer, right?
O'Brien must suffer.
That is one of the facts of, especially Deep Space Nine, is O'Brien must suffer. And this is the pinnacle of that statement. This particular episode is the one that like goes down as O'Brien suffering the most. It is, I understand the concept behind this type of punishment. It kind of reminds me of even back in the original series when they had the, people just walking into the killing booths.
The Taste of Armageddon? Yeah.
And it's like, it's supposed to be better. It's supposed to be more humane. But the thing is, if he'd actually been incarcerated, then that would have been his life. And this, it's like, he has to go back to his life after this. And how do you do this? This is like the inner light, but it's like the inner dark, right?
Yeah. Big time.
Opposite of what that was. And how do you come back from that?
Yeah. That's where I definitely feel this fell short. Because again, whatever it is, and they were very vague about, well, he was asking some questions and then it was quickly determined that they thought he was a spy. And so he was tried and convicted and we put 20 years of prison sentence in his brain. Here you go, have him back now. Where's the recourse for any of that? what the hell kind of legal
they
system
can't undo it.
Well, yeah, but what kind of legal system just allowed this trial to go? Did O'Brien have no representation? Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, agreed. But even the Cardassian system, where you're guilty and not proven innocent, they at least have a show trial. Where they can say, and again in the Cardassian system, explain, well, the people love seeing how guilt is explained and explored. Where with this, it was what they, just very much a throwaway line that, well, we thought he did some stuff, and there was clearly no evidence because we know as the audience that O'Brien wasn't doing probably anything. He was just asking some questions, and then they plug it in, and then they throw him back, and then there's no consequences for those aliens. They're like, oh, well, we're good. See ya. I just, that part of it in the beginning really bugged the shit out of me. You know what I mean?
Isn't that though?
That's true. That's
how
true.
it affects O'Brien.
Yeah.
And you got a human-centric view here. You got an Earth-centric view where, a lot of the Star Trek aliens are, of course, stand-ins for human cultures. So you're going to have courtrooms and trials and stuff that is familiar to us as a legal explanations, right? Whether it's the Cardassian court, the Klingon court, the court from lower decks with the horn that you speak the truth into. Like you have, there's something that's somewhat familiar where you have lawyers and evidence and testimonies and bottom and all of that. But it's alien, and that's the point of it. We're not supposed to understand it. We're just supposed to deal with the consequences on O'Brien's side of it.
Right.
If they're not a Federation world, then Federation can't do anything about it. They
That's
just
true.
have to sort of deal with how this is affecting their officer.
It's very true. Very true. And this is obviously, it's a big study in PTSD.
Yes.
And it's, it's the way that we really should treat our veterans that we absolutely don't. And anyway, if you've ever known anybody in the military who is a vet who suffers from something like this, it's very difficult for them to get the kind of help they need. And sometimes the help that they need maybe just doesn't exist. And it doesn't get solved in 42 minutes like it does for O'Brien. And then the very next episode, he's totally fine.
But
he's never really the same again, much like with a Coram Lan and, the dude from the dude who thought he was the emissary who came back,
right.
And Bajoran Society. Well, Bajoran Society had to change to survive, and it doesn't just go back. So I guess another question is, how is O'Brien's character different from this point forward? I guess I can't, and maybe it'll take us continuing to watch, but I can't. He's more suspicious. Yeah. Did Cole Meany slip something different into his portrayal of O'Brien after this? Yeah. You're right. Maybe he stops asking so many questions. He's not quite so buddy, chummy, curious. Maybe he's just like,
he does continue to suffer. Stuff continues to happen to him.
Right.
That is
right
on lines of, never quite to this depth.
Right.
But I think that he does continue to suffer. He does continue to have, not just writers treating him poorly, but the thing with PTSD too is that you cover it up, right?
Yeah.
You don't admit.
Trust me,
that are
know from personal experience, without a doubt.
And I think that makes this a realistic portrayal. Maybe I'm appending something after the fact and kind of going, well, of course he's not going to say anything about it, covering up Discovery in the records, right?
Right.
It's
right.
But I think some things do continue to affect him. I think and they have had a precedent for a deep trauma like this affecting characters because they did it on Next Generation with Picard after Best of Both Worlds.
Right.
They did a reset button to some extent, but they followed up with that and they continued up through season 3 of Picard to address the trauma that Picard went through in becoming Locutus and being assimilated. Like that, this is not on that same level. This is, is a one episode thing, but I don't know about you guys. I remember this episode so clearly because it affected me so much because it seemed so cruel and so important for O'Brien's character, and to see how he did react after this 20 years of treatment, it just seems so awful to me. And how does he survive, and how does he get along? Does he get along?
Right.
And what does he hide? What does he learn to do in order to cope and to quote unquote get on with his life?
Whew, boy, it strikes pretty.
Okay.
It absolutely strikes, close to home for me. I've been through some traumatic stuff in my life. I lost a child a number of years back. I've been through 2 really horrific divorces, and I've during which case I was homeless for a little while, or I was living in an apartment with no furniture. And and today I have an absolutely wonderful life. I having this great conversation with you guys, live in a wonderful home in a wonderful neighborhood. Things did bounce back for me, but do I compartmentalize, and how do I deal with things that are difficult? Yeah, you're right. It changes you forever, without a doubt. Wow, a lot heavier than I expected to dig in. Let's at least transition over to Aaron to get his thoughts. Maybe he has something less dire to say about this episode. Let's find out.
It's definitely, it was a very cruel episode. I don't remember this so much from when I was younger, because I wasn't particularly deep when I was a kid. I was like, yay, laser guns and violence and all that.
Pew, pew, pew. Yes.
So I didn't appreciate this as much then as I do now. So I actually really enjoyed the psychological study and everything. Because, nowadays that's like what I'm all about, is breaking down the characters and what makes them tick and stuff like that. And I absolutely love that. And I think for me, the thing that I really ended up latching onto for this episode was the idea of how that technology works exactly. Because you put the memories in, but is it like a scripted memory, or is it something that's more interactive? They said they customized it for the inmate, but the whole thing, like him having that mysterious cellmate, and how that whole thing ultimately goes with them having the fight. And then, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but it ends poorly. And I wonder how much of that was because that's what Miles was really feeling at that time, or how much of that was scripted. It just seems to me like the more I think about it, the more the depths of the cruelty of this particular punishment really was. Is it inevitable? Is he always going to suffer that horrific act at the end, or could it have gone differently for someone else?
Interesting.
Yeah. So that to me was the big question watching this, and that's kind of what I've been mulling over ever since I saw it.
Wow. Heavy stuff, and a heavy pack of episodes without a doubt about it. So awesome. All right. Well, here comes to the part, and this is funny because we're going to roll the entire episode into one. Let's each of us pick a favorite and a least favorite. And I will kick it to Jen first. So Jen, favorite and least favorite of all 6, including obviously Bar Association.
Favorite is Bar Association. I mean, maybe I'm biased to pick that one, but it is one of it. It's a really great episode, and it takes a lot of things I believe into account. And it's a great episode. So Bar Association for my favorite out of this pack. Least favorite, Sons of Moog.
Yeah,
it just doesn't have the same punch and impact as the rest of them, or the Ducat. It's
centered around a super irregular guest star, and then once he's gone, literally never heard from again in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, I totally hear it. Aaron, how about you?
This is a tough one, because I gotta say I actually really enjoyed all these episodes.
Yeah, same. I gotcha.
If I have to pick a favorite, I probably would have to go with Rules of Engagement. I just had so much fun watching that episode.
Clong clong.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for procedural law. It was so fun for me. Least favorite, gosh, I don't know. I would probably have to go with I think Ascension. And again, like I said, that by no means means that it's a bad episode. It's just out of that bunch, it was the one I least got into overall, I think.
I hear you. Gotcha. Well, I am going to actually echo your clong clong and say that was also my favorite. It was so intense with the Starfleetness and the Klingon and the skeevy Klingon lawyer. And I love dress uniforms. What can I say? But no, it was a great story. And I love the asides and kind of different ways that they told the story. And again, O'Brien really got highlighted in that one as well as being an expert on Starship combat and just being great, the most important person in Starfleet history. And for me, again, Sons of Moog, I think, echoing what's been said, because again, it's centered around a very irregular, I won't say irrelevant co-star, but of someone who this is his one and only appearance in Deep Space Nine, kind of like Q has his one and only appearance as basically a throwaway episode early in the series. It's kind of like, oh, okay, and then never heard from again. It's just really not that vital. So, well, cool. All right. Well, guys, that wraps us up. Aaron, welcome to the team. I think you passed the preliminary round, so you're now in the stack of future talent. Where do people find you out there on the socials and things of that nature?
Well, you can find us, my chapter at USS Rhapsody. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. And my other fan group that I run is Michigan Ghostbusters Team GBMI. You can also find us on Facebook. And we are on YouTube as well. We just recently had our anniversary special, our reunion special that launched this past Halloween. That's out there on YouTube if you want to go check that out.
Good deal. All right, Jen, how about you?
I have a Linktree, which is linktree.com/JenWatsonArt. On there, you can find links to my Instagram, Facebook, Etsy shop. Currently on vacation, but will be back sometime soon. And of course, my Screen Rant author page, where you can find all of my articles.
Awesome.
That is linktree.com/JenWatsonArt.
And I always like to talk about how proud we are of Jen and her awesome work on Screen Rant. And I read some, if not all, those articles, most definitely. But yeah, definitely go check that out. Well, I actually quit Twitter X this week. I deleted it. When you start seeing companies and some of the biggest media outlets in the world abandoning a social media site, the writing is on the wall, and I may be the last horse crossing the finish line, but I'm done. So I'm now entirely over on Threads, where I am C3Carpenter, spell it out. I'm also on Instagram, same, but over on Threads, you can also find us Secret.Friends.Unite. Is our handle there. But as mentioned with SFI, my wife April and I do run the USS Grand Petoskey. We are one of the biggest chapters in SFI globally. We're based here in West Michigan, but we have chapters all over Michigan, including Aaron's, and Eastern Canada, of which I actually am regional coordinator of Region 13. If you are a Trekker within the sound of my voice, please visit sfi.org to learn more about the organization, or certainly give Region 13 or USS Grand Petoskey a Google and find our websites if you'd like to be connected with Trekkers in your neighborhood. All right. Well, with that, friends, as always, thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Be the Starfleet that you wish to see in the world.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.